lost and witless. Suddenly he stopped. There was an answer, or so he thought, but it seemed to come from behind.
Good morning again. This feels very similar to last time. Okay, so things that you will not believe happened 2 times over. The first thing, let's start with the slightly crazier one just to get it out of the way. I just pulled this blanket out of my closet to just put it on my bed, have an extra layer of blanketness, and I went out into the living room, shook it off because it had been in the closet, came back here, put it down, and I walked back into the living room, and there was a huge old scorpion on the floor, which I am 100% sure just came off of that blanket. So, I killed the scorpion, but I'm only like, I don't know, 75% sure that this blanket is okay. It's probably fine. So that's the first thing that you won't believe. Actually, it's just that's just living out in the middle of nowhere. And the second thing that you would not believe is slightly less dramatic, but still very impactful to me. I finished Fellowship yesterday, and then I was looking on Audible this morning. I didn't expect them to ever give me another free trial because that's how I got the 1 credit from last year anyway, but they were offering a free trial that included 2 book credits. And so I went ahead and did that, and so I have Two Towers and Return of the King on audiobook too, and I haven't had to pay a dime for any of it. And I immediately canceled the plan too because I got what I wanted and now I'm done with it. So I have basically gotten the audiobook for all 3 of these for free with very minimal effort. So a little proud of myself, but also it's just blind luck. And then, okay, so I just mentioned I finished Fellowship yesterday. Yay. It made me emotional. Surprise, surprise. It's so funny how every time I read through, something else gets me. The things that made me cry this time around, it was not the first times that those things have made me cry, but I'm always just... Actually, there was one thing that made me cry for the first time, but most of them were, things that have made me emotional before. Even... Okay, so spoilers. If you're watching this, just, spoilers. Gandalf falling and dying. He's not even dead is the thing that I completely know that he's not even dead. I've read this like so many times before and it doesn't matter. Overlay video here of me being ridiculously emotional for something that I've read a billion times. But something about the descriptions of Frodo realizing that Sam is weeping as they run, and then Frodo realizes that he himself is weeping. From there on, I'm done. I'm also, of course, like listening to the score from the movie in the background, and Howard Shore is a genius, and so that's also like making me emotional. The stupid light. I'm gonna have to like wait a few minutes. The other thing that unsurprisingly made me emotional was Boromir's temptation at the end. That has gotten me more and more every time that I read the books. I sympathize with him more. I feel for him. Because the way that the movies portray him, it's kind of like, from the get-go, he's kind of untrustworthy and he's going to take the ring. But the temptation applies to basically everybody. Faramir is kind of the strongest of them all. But Boromir is not any worse than the large majority of characters. You just actually get to see the ring really take him for a second, and that's what breaks my heart. And there's so much more that I could talk about that too, why it does break my heart. But there you go. The one thing that did surprise me, that it made me weirdly emotional, just like tear up for a second, was when the hobbits are getting attacked by Old Man Willow and Tom Bombadil comes to save them for the first time. First of all, I love Tom Bombadil so much, but that's not the point. When they are going back to Tom's house and Goldberry greets them and they just hear her voice coming from the door, it describes her voice as both young and ancient as the spring, and like something else. I could have pulled out the book, but I did it because I'm lazy. But I read that description of her voice and started tearing up, and I was like, what the heck is going on? So, I don't know. One thing that I noticed this first time, and probably just because I used the audiobook, was that Tom Bombadil speaks in verse. Even when he's not singing songs, he basically speaks in verse, and it took me hearing it. It took somebody reading it to me for me to hear that, which just tells you, like, that's completely how it's supposed to go. You're supposed to hear the songs as you read Lord of the Rings. You're supposed to hear people speaking. And just one more time, giving props to Andy Serkis for doing 5 billion different voices, and half the time it's just, like, imitations of his friends. Altogether, I mean, really enjoyed my reread of Fellowship of the Ring. Who surprised no one. Oh my god.
Halflings, laughed the rider that stood beside Eomer. Halflings? But they are only a little people in old songs and children's tales out of the north. Do we walk in legends or on the green earth in the daylight? A man may do both, said Aragorn. For not we, but those who come after will make the legends of our time. The green earth, say you. That is a mighty matter of legend, though you tread it under the light of day.
Guess who cried on page 2? Haha. I mean, it's the departure of Boromir. For one, can we talk about how offensive that chapter title is? And then 2, how offensive it is that his departure happens on page 2. I don't know about y'all, I find that very offensive. To be expected, I'm on the track of my usual being emotional from these books. And I know that Tolkien gets a lot of flack for his pacing, that it's just horrifically slow in some parts, but I'm thinking about, I'm trying to notice the difference between these different parts that are all slowly paced, but I like some a lot more than others. Like, for example, when the 3 hunters meet Éomer and the Rohirrim, I love that whole scene. I think I am glued to every word during that first meeting, but then like in the next chapter when Merry and Pippin meet Treebeard, not the same. I am very bored, to be honest with you. I love Treebeard and I love our hobbits, but the last thing that I will say before wrapping it up here, because I'm finished with book 3 in like halfway through Two Towers, right? So I think I'll just like end this here so it's not morbidly long, and then make just a part 3 for the last half of Lord of the Rings. So like I said, the last thing that I wanted to talk about was Theoden and Saruman, because with Saruman I've really picked up in the first full like 3 books, little books, I've picked up more and more of those details, how often they talk of Saruman and his treachery, and I'm starting to get its depth a little bit better. Because I grew up with the movies, I just kind of always expect Saruman to be this bad guy, but he was with them for a long time. And then along with that is his influence over Wormtongue and so over Theoden, and how I know, and I'm starting to see how later it's going to parallel with Denethor and Sauron, because with Saruman and Theoden, well, one, Theoden has lost his eldest son and his heir, which Denethor is also, he's in that same spot. Theoden is being tempted by the influence of Saruman to yield to the power of the enemy he's trying to be overcome. Later we're going to see that Denethor, the same thing is happening with him, but by the power of Sauron. But I'm so proud of Theoden and his arc, that he's so quickly able to overcome the influence of Saruman, some thanks to Gandalf, but also like he overcomes the voice of Saruman, which is so powerful. I will no doubt talk about this in the part 3, but one of my favorite things in these books is the theme of hope despite despair. And Theoden's arc is such a beautiful example of that. Meanwhile, Denethor is kind of his foil in a way, because they're in such similar positions with their sons and trying to figure out what path they'll take. Will they, you know, give themselves over to evil for the sake of preserving their people a little bit longer or not? But Theoden, I'm just so... my heart goes out to him, because he's already gone through so much, and he's not near done. Well, he kind of is, but... But anyway, before I ramble too much, I'm just gonna go ahead and end it here. I'm having a good time. Like I said earlier, who's surprised? No one. But it's still fun. So thanks for being here.